Welcome into another live draft coverage here on the FFPC YouTube. I'm your host, Aidan, Liquorie, joined as always, Dave Terp. Terp, today, covering the FantasyPros Championship, $1 million grand prize, over $6 million in the total prize pool. Terp, not just any FantasyPros Championship draft, though.
The best of the best tonight.
Talk to me about this hardware draft. What should we expect from this draft featuring the best of the best?
Blood will be shed tonight. You got the best of the best, big talkers. These guys back it up. You got champs, you got grinders, you got, just guys that like to mix it up. I mean, this is the who's of who, the legends of the fantasy football right now. So I expect big things tonight. You're going to see a lot of guys you don't expect to fall, and a lot of guys that go a lot earlier. So ADP will be set tonight. To me, this is the start of the fantasy football season for the non-degenerates like all of us.
I mean, and you say, what should we expect from ADP in this draft? Because you were talking to me just
throw it out the window. Don't even look at ADP. These guys are not even looking at it. They're going to try to just mess. They're going to get their guys, but they're going to try to mess other guys up. You're going to see a lot of picks you're going to look at and you're that's probably 2 rounds too early. These guys don't care. They're trying to win this league for bragging rights, and they're going to definitely go get their guy.
Terp, one item in news really since we went on our last one, I believe, was DeAndre Hopkins getting released. I just kind of want to start there just so we cover kind of as a draft is about to tip off in about a couple minutes, give or take. DeAndre Hopkins, Chiefs, Schefter hinted at might be the favorite. The Browns seem to be in hot pursuit. DeAndre Hopkins, I just want to know, one, is the Chiefs like the obvious, yes, he should go there, I want him to go there as a fantasy? And then kind of what are just your overall thoughts on his situation?
Chiefs is the obvious. Chiefs is where everybody wants him to go. The Bills probably second. I think he's more caring about money than winning. So I think he's going to go to the Patriots. I don't like it. It's not great for fantasy football, but that's where I think he's going to end up, because I think the Chiefs and the Bills, they're just not going to pay him what he wants. I don't see him going out and taking a cheap contract. He wants what Odell Beckham got, 1 year, prove it type of situation. And
surprisingly,
Kansas City and Buffalo don't have that money right now.
He was talking a big game, and it was frustrating because I thought with the release or the trade, it was all about, I just want to go win, play with a good quarterback.
Right.
And then all the information that's kind of leaked out since is that it's not really about that. So in that respect, a little bit disappointing in a way, but I think the Browns are kind of the dark horse right now, but I don't know if you can really call them that with how much they've been talking. Seeing the Dolphins hinted at, obviously the Patriots are always lurking, need a receiver. I'm intrigued to see where he goes in this draft, just with these rumors swirling and this kind of the unknown, because you're getting one of the elite receivers in the game. And if he goes to the Chiefs, I mean, he goes to Kansas City. How high do you think he goes?
I think he gets probably to like the 2-3 turn, maybe. I don't think he gets any higher than that. Probably settle somewhere in the early third. I don't see him getting like crazy, up into the second. But don't forget, they do open the season. So that Friday draft, if DeAndre Hopkins is a Chief, he could easily be a first-round pick if something gets crazy.
So, Terp, obviously, we're going to have some people on. I should have mentioned this from the very start, but we have a loaded slate. It's not just you and me. We have, I believe, 12 people joining.
10 out of the 12 guys will be on tonight talking shit, ready to
all
go.
Way smarter than us to discuss their draft live.
Or so they think.
Yeah, I mean, that is true. But Terp, draft is underway. Justin Jefferson, Travis Kelce, Jamar Chase. Our last live draft we did started off Bijan,
John Robinson, Josh Jacobs. A little different.
Yeah. So this one a little more going to plan. Terp, I kind of want to ask. I'm going to ask our first guest, who should be popping on roughly, give or take, about 5 minutes, and we're going to have people coming on throughout the night. This was my question: is there's kind of been a consensus 4 established of the Kelce, Jefferson, Chase, and then McCaffrey. So I was going to ask you, who's most likely, do you think, to break into that with Austin Eckler kind of contract situation smoothed out a bit? Is he the one who's going to jump in? As we see McCaffrey falling here a bit, which is surprising.
He should fall. He's not going to be the running back 1 this year. Austin Eckler will be the running back 1, followed by my guy Tony Pollard. We'll save that for another time. But so far, I don't see any surprises. I mean, I expected McCaffrey to fall a little bit. A lot of these guys listening to him aren't the highest on him. So people that are watching this are expecting his name to go first in the running back position. And in this type of draft, this is not going to happen.
I mean, we talked extensively, I think, in our past shows, our concerns with him. relative to the workload. Obviously, age a factor. Elijah Mitchell's presence, but his ADP has settled in the last week per Fantasy Mojo, who will be joining us later on today, at the RB1 and second overall, just overall in the contest. So certainly a drop here. Cooper Kupp as the third receiver off the board. He's settled on that ADP. After the Eckler and McCaffrey, are you just kind of expecting a run on receivers this draft, or what are you thinking is going to happen?
I would expect this first round to be top heavy receiver. These guys' tendencies, especially, in a draft like this, is probably to get the best available receiver early because I think it's going to dry up. The running back dead zone of last year is non-existent this year. If anything, it's the running back value zone. I mean, there's plenty of guys you can get in the 4th, 5th, 6th round that will be starters from you with the tight end and obviously receivers up top. And if you get one of the elite quarterbacks. So I expect receivers to go pretty quickly.
I don't know if I've asked you this. After the Chase and Jefferson duo, who is, I haven't even asked this. Are those two your top two? And then if so, who's your third guy?
It's Chase, Jefferson, and me, but not like, I'm not, planting a flag or anything like that. Cooper Kupp is my number 3, so I agree with, and Tyreek Hill is number 4, so no disagreement so far on any of these picks. I mean, I expect the first round to be pretty by the book. After that, I think it'll get a little wacky.
A.J. Brown off the board at number 8. Do you think it's pretty close? So it's not the best question relatively to you about the difference, but come September, do you think, because saying both guys have QB injury risks, do you think Tyreek at all ever passes Cooper Kupp as that wide receiver 3 on boards? Because it used to early on in this process, it was Tyreek. Kupp, I've seen he's been, sorry for cutting you off, but he's been inching slowly up because he was back into the first round in some of these drafts. I remember you and me talking early on, even in February, like, I think he's got to go higher. Do you think Tyreek ever passes him, or do you think Kupp locks in as that wide receiver 3?
I don't think so. I think Kupp should lock in the third receiver. The only worry you have with Kupp is obviously injury, but that's a worry with every player, is if the Rams are just really, really bad. So do they, sit him down if he gets a little nagging injury later in the season when it actually matters for, the big money? Or maybe possibly they trade him, which, could be even better for a stretch. But I think Kupp has a better chance of finishing where he was on pace to last year than, being a bust first round pick.
Looking at the end of the first round, A.J. Brown, as I said, 1-8, Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, Stephon Diggs, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Can you give me an argument for Jonathan Taylor as a non-believer? Or are you also a non-believer in Taylor?
I'm also a non-believer. I mean, he just doesn't catch the ball. I mean, do I think he has a great setup this year? With obviously Richardson, a running, probably more of a running quarterback than a throwing quarterback developmental wise right now. I do, but I mean, it's just, is he going to catch the ball? Like, I mean, all these guys that are going right near him, Eckler, McCaffrey, Bijan, you think, and then Barkley, I expect them to all catch a ton of passes. You don't know that with Taylor. So his ceiling is only so he has to be perfect like he was 2 years ago to get to where you need him to be a first round pick, in my opinion. Taking him over guys like CeeDee Lamb, Barkley, St. Brown, even Diggs.
So last question for you, and then we're going to get our first guest on. Terp, you had kind of been off of this guy in our early things. You said you're coming around. Talk to me about Saquon Barkley and what's kind of maybe turning the tide for you.
I mean, he's going to be back. I mean, there's no holdout really where I feel like they're going to figure out a way to get a contract done soon. That offense, in my opinion, is ascending. I mean, they added some receivers. None of them are superstars, but they're guys that, I think they'll, obviously Darren Waller that will take Daniel Jones to the next level. And Barkley has nobody behind him. Catches passes and not a single. He has me and you behind him. He has nobody to worry about at all taking carries away from him. He's going to play all the snaps he can handle. So he's definitely a guy that early on I was off, but then when you look into it and dig deep, he's definitely a guy that I'm not off on anymore.
Terp, our first guest of the day, drafting out of the 4th spot in today's draft from playerprofiler.com, Billy Muzio. Billy, thank you for joining us.
Hey boys, how are you?
Holding up, can't complain. Excited to watch a draft. We were just talking about your pick. You went Eckler over McCaffrey. Turp
What
Yeah.
happened to Bijan Robinson?
No, I'm not doing Bijan.
Man, I was expecting you just to throw a shocker out there. I
Yeah,
didn't stand with you when you were getting killed the other day when you posted it, but
oh yeah, it's the people aren't happy with that take. I got Dave on the phone, so Dave was unfortunately not able to hop on the podcast. He's at his mother-in-law's, but he's on the phone with me here, so I'll probably have to take the phone, put it up to my ear as we're on the clock.
No worries at all. We understand.
And
how
we'll
much
get
did
the
you guys
pick.
argue on that first pick? Was it pretty
not a
much
lot?
set in stone?
We're both very high on Eckler this year. They're the only two running backs that I have in my projections projected for over 300 points for 2023. I just really like the Chargers offense this year. Dave really likes the Chargers offense this year. I've actually had a surprising amount of 1 through 4 hole picks and have a decent amount of Christian McCaffrey right now. And so we're able to build a unique team taking Eckler this early and kind of changing the landscape of the board. And so it allows us to do something different out of the 4 hole.
And we know you're on the clock right here in a sec. So
yeah, I'm going to pull him up 1 second.
My question will be directed at Terp right now as Billy and Dave make their picks. Terp, I wanted to ask you back on Eckler. How much did that contract situation concern you?
Nothing at all. These running backs have no leg to stand on right now. What are they going to hold out? Like nobody's paying running backs. Like these guys are going to get the money they can get and get back on the field. And hopefully some team next year or, the Chargers pay him a little bit more. He's never going to get the big contract that guys of the past got. So, Eckler, he just wanted a little bit more money. He got it. New offensive coordinator, Herbert taking the next step, ton of receivers at obviously wide receiver. So there's a ton of options in that offense. That's a team that's on the rise, especially fantasy-wise. So the sky's the limit for the Chargers. Can Herbert take the next step with Kellen Moore?
Yeah, there's something also to be said that Chargers offense, right? Eckler, it's one of those until I see it, right? Until I see the decline, I'm not going to believe it. And there's no reason to assume it. They've only added weapons, the new OC. So I think Eckler would you say though, come again September, I've asked you this question a couple times, is Eckler the clear RB1 or is it still a debate between him and McCaffrey? Does he establish himself?
For me, he is. He's my running back one. I think it's pretty clear. The McCaffrey thing, I'm just a little worried about Elijah Mitchell. He's a little bit farther down on my board than he is on some people's, but he's definitely somebody I've been fading a little bit more than probably the field when it comes to early in the drafts.
Yeah, people in the chat are saying his record is proven, right? It's year after year of just consistent great fantasy play.
You saw though last year when Elijah Mitchell was the guy.
Yeah, that's what we've been saying. Concerning.
Najee Harris, there's it.
Billy, if Billy is back with us, went with Chris Olave.
We're back.
Went with Chris Olave. Talk us through that pick.
Yeah, again, just another player I'm high on. He's actually my wide receiver 10 inside of my projections this year. I think it's going to be a volume play. Again, I'm on the clock here. Let's see.
Take your time.
And we went back to back. Dave, go ahead and pick, buddy. I trust you here. There's one in the queue that I like, but if you want to choose someone else, I'm fine with it. You can go ahead and pick who you want here, Dave. Okay, he's going. We have a couple in the queue. Chris Olave, back to Chris Olave. Okay, cool. He took the guy I wanted.
There you go.
So this is like those real life draft room, like that the behind the scenes at the NFL teams release, but we just got it at a much smaller scale.
Yeah, so looking at the NFC South projections, it's pretty obvious that Chris Olave is going to lead this team in target share. Michael Thomas is just a shell of himself compared to where he was when he dominated the league. We haven't seen him play many games the last couple years with that nagging injury. Even if we do see 10, 15 games, or if we get 15 games, I think it would be a blessing for Michael Thomas. But I think that we're closer to maybe the 10 to 12 range. And that would probably be the highest I'd project him for as of today, because we're still hearing that there is some concern on that toe. So I'm not sold that Michael Thomas is going to play a full season. And so that being said, it still opens up a lot of targets here inside of the Saints offense. We also know Alvin Kamara is still facing a pending suspension, which we know that Kamara has been heavily involved in the passing game the last couple of years. So there is a scenario that I can see in a world alternate the US, right, or where we are right now. So this is like Earth like 3.3, to where Michael Thomas could be missing games. Alvin Kamara will be suspended 6 games, and that leaves them with Jamal Williams and Kendra Miller in the passing game. Then
Don't
that
forget
gives
Juwan
us
Johnson.
Juwan Johnson is going to be the number 2 option in the passing game once Michael Thomas is out. And then you have Rashid Shaheed, Traquan Smith, and then I think it falls off from there to like Brian Edwards and A.T. Perry. And so it's nothing to be really alarming of any target share for Chris Olave. And so I could see a scenario in which Chris Olave on a floor has, 135, 140 targets. My mean projection has him about 152 targets. I could see a scenario like we just discussed where Michael Thomas and Kamara miss time, and he's closer to that 165, 170 target range, which would put him, near the top of the league inside of targets. And so love the upside with Chris Olave, love the floor with Chris Olave, like his new quarterback that he has that's going to be able to air the ball out to him, and think that he's in store for a big season.
Yeah, and not to compare the two as players, but I had heavy Devontae Adams shares last year, and Derek Carr peppered him with targets just week after week. So I think there's somebody said, as you said, with the possible absences on the Saints, that could be the same for Olave. Not your picks, but I just was intrigued that little run of running backs right before you guys took TJ Hawkins. I just was wondering, of those 4, did any of those were on your board, or any of those guys you like? Because I am a big Ramondre stan this year. I'm thrilled that he went at the 212. I think that's where he should be going. I think he should go way higher. I just kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on kind of those late second, early third round running backs.
Yeah, I like Ramondre Stevenson much more than my draft partner Dave does. So he was 3rd in line on my list here. Dave is very high on Breece Hall this year. I like Breece Hall. I do have some concerns with the ACL, but I think that he's a player that down the stretch could absolutely beat you inside of these drafts, especially as he kind of gets up to speed and gains trust inside that knee, and mentally and physically, and is able to kind of work into it rather than being forced into it. And so that's how I project Breece Hall to be this year. Maybe limited or worked into things the first few weeks. And then down the stretch, he's a player that, if you don't own much of, could very well beat you inside the championship when it matters the most, especially when you have this Jets defense that is looking to be pretty stout. Aaron Rodgers knows that he has a stout defense, doesn't have to air the ball out as much as he has previously in his career, doesn't have to take on the burden of managing the entire offense. They're going to be able to hand the ball off to Breece Hall and rely on that defense. That's kind of how I project this Jets defense to look at times. Don't get me wrong, I still think that they're going to air the ball out with Aaron Rodgers, and they're still going to do things, but they're going to be in games where they know they can manage the clock, and it's going to heavily favor the game script for Breece Hall. And so I do like Breece Hall a lot. Derrick Henry's schedule is very appealing to me this year. I've never been a huge Derrick Henry fan, but if you look at this offense, it's just a bunch of misfits. I mean, outside of Burks and Chigo, there's really no one else inside of this offense than Derrick Henry. So we do expect him to gain some of that target share like we saw last year, really for the first time in his career. And so if he's able to maintain that, as well as the workload that we've been seeing, he could be in line for another monster season, especially given their playoff schedule. When you take a look at the schedule when it matters most in the FFPC, weeks 15, 16, and 17, he gets Houston, Seattle, and back to Houston. And we all know how bad Houston was against the run last year. And how
much he dominates them.
How much he dominates them. So this could be another, league-winning Derrick Henry season when it matters most.
The NFL schedule makers knew what they were doing. I know you have a pick coming up super soon. The draft is flying. We wanted to ask you, you mentioned TJ Hawkinson is who you wanted, and I know you might have to break real quick to make this pick, and we can pick it up. But I was kind of just intrigued because in recent weeks, I've kind of been almost seeing a split on like fantasy Twitter. You see a lot of people saying that he can't maintain the elite level, the concerns with Jordan Addison getting added, just the continued concerns about Kirk Cousins. But I just kind of want to hear, and I know you're on deck right here, so we'll let you make your pick. But Terp, I want to put it to you. Billy, you make your pick with Dave, you get it. But Terp, what are your thoughts on TJ Hawkinson? He's a guy we haven't really discussed that much.
I feel like when the Vikings got Addison, they moved. Hawkinson started to fall just a little bit.
Who do we want here?
But I feel like Hawkinson's the better overall pick. I mean, especially in this format with the tight end premium. I mean, Addison's still a rookie, so obviously he's a talented kid, but there's still a lot of unknown there. And nagging injury to start camp, you never like to see that from a rookie. He's getting behind a little bit. KJ Osborne's still there. There's no slouch. So I think Hawkinson's the right pick when it comes to, this format. I'm on board.
Terp, any surprises in this draft so far? I mean, I
There
think
honestly hasn't been any that I mean, outside of Najee Harris, I don't really see anything that's been like crazy. And he just took my guy, so I'm all aboard the Hubbard and Billy train. I mean, all aboard Christian Watson.
Yeah, I mean, Christian Watson. I'll look up at his ADP real quick because I was about to say I obviously
It's moving in the wrong direction.
It is now up to 5-1, so he was a little above ADP, but yeah, it's
wide receiver 1 this year, not overall, just wide receiver 1.
You can't throw out wide receiver 1 like that with no context.
I made sure I corrected that real quick.
The issue is obviously if you listen to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, some of the other live draft coverages, Balky's going to get me on some of these Packers guys, and I'm gonna get burned because the Packers are going to stink probably, but. No, not trying to remain level headed, but Balky is in on Aaron Jones and Watson and that offense with Jordan Love. I know as you kind of said, DeAndre Hopkins completely missed that 312. We were asking.
Surprised. I mean, I think he's going to start going a little earlier, especially if he gets to one of them prime matchups. Love Christian Watson, big fan, huge fan. Great pick.
Yeah. Again, it breaks down to just target share in this offense. A lot of vacated targets. We saw what he was able to do in the small sample size that we had last year. Yes, it's a different quarterback, but even in the one game that he had with Jordan Love, they were able to connect against the Eagles across the middle of the field. I mean, I lost a pretty good sized bet on that for the over. And
it was looking great for a while. I remember the game very well.
Yeah. So
you thought it was over at halftime, and then
boom, it happened.
It got real weird.
So I'm happy with the way it started. You know, in this kind of draft, you kind of have to throw ADP out the window because you don't know what these players are going to do. It's a sharp room. People will take their player. They'll ignore ADP. And so as high as we are in Watson, we didn't want to chance him not being there on the way back because it's a real possibility in this room. Normally we're playing against, a bunch of other randoms on FFPC. There's a real chance, it's probably highly likely that he makes it back. And so we just went with the player that we wanted at the time.
The Packers offense, I don't know if we were just talking about it and I was messing with Balky, he's high. So beyond just the target share, are you a believer in Jordan Love in that offense, or is it primarily rooted in that you think Watson's a talent? I know you guys are on the clock. I don't know if you need to go, so no worries.
No, we have the pick in already.
Locked and loaded.
This draft's going to move. It's not like some of these other drafts.
I mean, we have all these guests on. We might
poor Todd's going to be sitting there at the end. He's going to have 2 minutes. He's going to be like, "What the heck, guys? We put you there for a reason."
Calculated.
Very calculated.
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily that I'm a believer in Love. I think that Love has the skill set to succeed. I think that they have surrounded him with enough weapons to succeed, but I think it's more the fact of Christian Watson having the rapport with Love already and being able to just be a freak athlete and be able to take advantage of a situation in which he is now the number one wide receiver. Yes, they still have Romeo Doubs who's still on the team. I like Doubs, but probably more than most do, but he's not the talent that Christian Watson is. And so I also like Reed, and I think Reed probably combats Romeo for that role more than anything, and Christian Watson is going to just dominate the targets here. You have 2 rookie tight ends. We know how rookie tight ends take long to develop and kind of work into a role as they learn the route tree as well as the blocking schemes. And so we expect them to be involved, but I don't expect to see them anywhere near, some elite level of target share like you see with some tight ends. And so I haven't projected more in that 8 to 10.5% between the two of them. And so that leaves Christian Watson with a pretty conservative 22% target share in my projections. I think that's a conservative approach, and I think that he could very well outbeat that number. And even then, at 22%, he comes in as wide receiver 15 inside my rankings.
I think he'll settle in the 4th round as we get closer to late August, early September, the main event drafts and all that other stuff.
Yeah,
I don't see him slipping in the 5th with some of the guys you're seeing.
And we see him kind of go pretty regularly in the 5th right now. I think it will only climb. I think we're at his floor right now.
There would have to be Cortland Sutton range next.
Don't say that name. Do not say that name.
Very sour name for somebody I was on very heavily last year, but I could see him sneaking in the 3rd as we get real close.
And I always like to look at drafts and say which players have the potential to really outperform their ADP, right? He was selected here as wide receiver 21 off the board. As I said, I have him as wide receiver 15 inside of my projections. So I'll take the discount because wide receiver 15 went in round 3. That was DK Metcalf there. And I think everything said and done, I think the touchdown rate in which Christian Watson had last year is unsustainable. But even if he is able to keep up half of that, or even 40% of that, we're still looking at double-digit touchdowns inside of this offense. And how happy are you to have a receiver that's going to see 22% target share and double-digit touchdowns in round 4? And that's what I have to look at and say that it's a hard name to pass whenever I see him on the board.
There we go. Billy, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to let you get back to your draft. Having a stellar draft so far. As always, though.
Good luck,
truly, brother. Thank you. Thank you for hopping on with us.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
You too.
And Terp, guess what? Because this thing is flying, we're right on to another guest. Out of the 9 spot, I believe he just had a draft pick.
2 Falcons. Get him on here.
We'll get it on here. From player profile, Theo Greminger. Off the bat, Terp hates
2
the Falcons.
Terp, I'm uncomfortable with 2 Falcons as well, but I think Drake London there. I'm not like in love with Drake London, but I do think he represents some upside pick there, and I think there's a little bit of correlation there. A slight anti, I'm not anti, but a slight anti Kyle Pitts move there, where they had about 100 more pass attempts in Arthur Smith year 1 than they did last year. I am not an Arthur Smith fan, but I do believe this could be a funnel offense where it's really predictable week in, week out. I don't love the wide receivers in this range. I think the problem with me starting running back was I could get jammed up at wide receiver, and I didn't want to risk with Austin and Noah here, and also Dwayne getting really jammed. So I wanted to make sure I got a wide receiver there in case this dries up a little bit more.
I thought you were having my favorite start to the draft here as we're looking at
2 Bijan Robinson fans.
Well, I mean, Bijan's
RB1. And then your guy, Terp, and then Pollard.
Stop it.
Listen, Terp, I'm no coward.
I stand with Billy.
So I'm not
with Billy.
I'm not going to be a coward when it comes to a great player like Bijan Robinson.
He is a great player.
And it's the end of the day, can this team tread water and then catch fire, late? And a lot of times in this league, like when I won it 2 years ago, it's tight around the margins. Usually there's one team at first, but like second, third, fourth, fifth,
it's very close.
Is always close. So when I won it, I think I had the 2 or 3 seed, and during the playoffs, I had a couple of guys who kind of caught fire. So like when you have Bijan Robinson and Tony Pollard, I do think I have 2 outlier RB1 overall types. Bijan, not so much, but Tony Pollard, like if you look at the situation, you've got to take a leap of faith with the volume, but in terms of the ability, the per touch, it's right there. So I'm about
the volume worries you. Do you think they add somebody else?
And we'll let you. You're on.
Do you want them to add somebody else?
And
so I am on the clock right now.
Pick.
And
make your pick.
Yeah. Again, I don't. This wide receiver tier is a little sketchy. I like Justin Herbert here. I like DeAndre Swift. I think Swift in the flex is interesting for me. I get a little bit of Philadelphia Eagles exposure.
Love that.
I could push up a wide receiver. I'm not a huge Michael Pittman guy this year. That seems kind of like a purgatory pick. I think that the top upside selection here for me is DeAndre Swift in the flex, and I'm going Swift here at the 604.
Love it.
Back
to Tony Pollard.
Yeah,
back to Tony Pollard. Do you think they add somebody?
Zeke.
I don't know. I think it's going to be,
Do you want them to add somebody? Like, I'm just like you. I'll take Tony Pollard exactly where he took him 100 times out of 100. Do you worry that the workload will break down?
Like, if they bring back Zeke, to me, that doesn't really scare me. You have to worry about a guy. I think the offense also could change a little bit. Like Pollard's dynamic. He's not, new offensive coordinator. And I think that, when you have Pollard on the field a lot, you're going to want to get him the ball in situations that he can excel on. And I think you could also see him have a career high in receptions this year. I think losing Dalton Schultz is interesting for Lamb and Pollard because there's the familiarity with Dak Prescott. He kind of knows what he's getting. He's a veteran quarterback, lean on your weapons. And I think Pollard could have an outsized receiving output that we've all been kind of waiting for him. A lot of times when these guys have these massive receiving years, they really, really hit. It's like a massive leap. And I think Pollard has that in his range of outcomes. So it's I like my draft so far. It's not quite how I thought it would go. DK Metcalf as my wide receiver 1 is not ideal, but I think that was a necessary pick for me. But I do like the way it started with running back.
You mentioned you don't love the DK pick. I was a fan of it. I think
it was.
I liked your running back start, and I think you did well. I think DK. I still like it, that offense, right? I think Geno can sustain them. I'm always waiting on the Lockett breakdown. Like every year, I'm like, this is the year. Just Lockett's irrelevant. But
I would have preferred Higgins or Smith there,
okay.
But they didn't fall. And then I would have probably taken Josh Allen, where Mark Garcia high-low took him at the 307. So like my queue got beat up, but DK was still in the queue. He made more sense to me than D Hops and Samuel. The Gibbs pick was interesting. So, DK's fine. But would I prefer DK more as a wide receiver 2? Yes, but it would have been impossible to get that sort of running back start. So I think I have a real strength in running backs where a couple teams are going to have to make up for it at running back. And I feel kind of good at where I'm at. The Kittle pick was a little bit reactionary to the Kyle Pitts one, but I do like George Kittle in this range. I think that like Kittle could be set up for a solid season. And
I feel like there's a little tear drop off after Kittle.
Yeah, like the other day, Terp, I took Dallas Goedert at the end of the 4th, and it just doesn't feel right.
It doesn't feel right. I mean, you need so much to go right for him to be up with those top 5, on paper, obviously.
Kittle's also a spike week guy. Like you've seen.
I mean, you saw him in the championship rounds. I mean, he's won guys, millions of dollars, literally.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I love the pick.
Yeah, I like the Kittle pick. I think it was more structural than, hey, I'm a George Kittle guy this year, but. Yeah, I don't hate the way the team's going. I'm going to have to make up for it at wide receiver a little bit. It'll be interesting to see how quarterback shakes out here. I would imagine Trevor Lawrence probably goes in the next few picks. I have not felt the need to press up on quarterback this year. I know the elite quarterbacks, having exposure to them, I get it for volume's sake.
They're starting to fall more.
Yeah. And this
to where it's a little bit more reasonable.
There you go. There's T-Law and Evan Engram. So Ron builds a little Jacksonville correlation. That's kind of a nice play right there. But yeah, it's this draft's a meat grinder. It always is. It's difficult now. It's going to be really difficult in like the 14th round.
I had a question. I obviously went running back to start, so probably wasn't in your build, but you had a great Jamir Gibbs tweet to hyping up his skill set. Great highlight. He obviously took DK and he goes right before. I want you to answer your question. You said after that Thursday night game, how high does Jamir Gibbs rise? Where do you think he rises to?
When you factor alcohol into the equation in some of those live Vegas drafts, right? Then the guys might go in the first round because it's the kind of game where it might be like all fourth quarter. Jamir Gibbs is catching pass after pass after pass, and he might end up with like 9 receptions in game 1 against Kansas City. They might get
30 plus points easily.
Yeah, 30 points, and then
he goes in the top probably 5 maybe in a lot of people.
There's going to be
crazy.
Some. They do.
You remember the Amari Cooper game,
of course,
2 seasons ago? How high he's
Peyton Manning when that Thursday night game, he went number 1 overall in my draft when I was out there. I'm like, what in the heck?
Yeah,
people are scared. They don't want to lose week 1. I mean, it's a short regular season, so like I'll get that week 1 win. The guy ended up losing.
Yeah, it's absolutely wild times with some of these guys. I'm coming up OTC again here, fellas.
Those receivers are starting to get ugly.
Exactly. So there's a few receivers here still left on the board. I might kind of get forced to take a guy a little higher than I'd like, but I might probably have to. It's also quarterbacks kind of in a weird tier here. Running backs in a weird tier here. Tight ends, not that great. Drop off is big. So I think somebody's going to take Freiermuth over the next few picks, and then the drop off gets even more interesting. So we'll see which way this goes. I have 3 guys in my queue, and they all play wide receiver.
Did you consider Treylon Burks at all in our 6th round?
Yeah, I definitely considered Treylon. I love Treylon. I got him in the 7th the other day. This is a sharp room. They're not going to let him fall down there.
No.
It's a kind of guy where Terp, you don't want to take the same guy every single draft,
Of course, and it's hard. It's hard not to sometimes.
So I'm OTC here, and I'm going to take a big gamble, and I'm going to take George Pickens and hope that Pickens takes a big step forward this year. I think this could go multiple ways, but this won't be the last wide receiver.
Somewhere Austin Martin is smiling.
Yeah,
bigger George Pickens guy out there.
It's a difficult range in the draft right now, wide receiver wise, and I think he does have some upside. So let's go for some Pickens here.
What are your thoughts on the Steelers' offense this year? Do you think they take the next step, or?
Yeah, I think they're interesting because a lot of times we see these year 2 quarterbacks take a big step forward, and sometimes it can be out of nowhere. I mean, Terp, you remember how buried Jared Goff was, and then in year 2 he takes a leap forward. Pretty much every single guy in last year's, last year we saw, and obviously I don't think Kenny Pickett is in this realm of talent, but you saw last year where Trevor Lawrence takes a big step forward. Justin Fields takes a big step forward in their fantasy production. So yeah, I'm of the opinion that Kenny Pickett can return like quarterback 15 value, and if he just does that, all the players hit at ADP. Even Najee Harris, who you don't like. I like Jaylen Warren a lot as a handcuff.
Love Jaylen Warren, but
like the Steelers running back can hit based on where they're going. So like Freiermuth, Pickens, Deontay Johnson, all of those guys can beat ADP.
Allen Robinson,
I think he's dust.
Everybody thinks he's dust, but that's exactly when he's going to come out and like do something. After last year, everybody got burned by him.
I hope he does nothing based on what I've drafted here in this draft with George Pickens. I hope Allen Robinson
goes away.
Yeah, completely. So I'm coming up OTC here again. This is a really difficult time in this draft, fellas. It's a flat tier. 8th round is weird. The other day I took A-Chain in the 8th round.
I like it.
Yeah,
go get your guy.
This build though, it's a tough selection.
It's definitely a tough. I think I've got to go back to the wide receiver one more time if possible. And gosh, this is a difficult one, guys. I do not.
I hate every option.
Yeah, every option is kind of sketchy. I think like if I didn't have 3 running backs, I'd probably go to the running back. Well, running back is decent here. Wide receiver wise, gosh, guys, this might go right down to the wire.
It's tough. I mean, there's not a lot of great selections.
Yeah, it's really not.
Like definitely the wide receiver dead zone people were talking about. You're getting close.
It's very, very dead zoney.
Kind of what you need.
It's really gross.
It's super gross, is right.
It's crazy. Like going through these drafts, like after like pretty much like Mike Evans, it gets real ugly. I mean, there are guys you don't even want, like Brandon Cooks.
I think I am going to take Quentin Johnston and push him up and hope he's something.
I like it.
I think this is just a push up time.
In a draft like this, you got to take some shots on a high upside player.
That was the one name I was looking at. That was like, if you're going to take a shot, because at this point, if you don't like anything, might as well shoot for upside, right? I feel like, I don't know. I'm intrigued to hear that when you're kind of in these dead zones, is your philosophy just let me try and go with the guy who may not love, but has the best upside? What's your play there?
It kind of depends on the structural build of the team. But I think basically I have the known commodity of DK Metcalf, and I've taken 3 shots at wide receiver 2. Even Drake London will say, there's a possibility where he really, really does not hit expectations. So I've given myself an opportunity here with 3 very talented, very high draft capital wide receivers that I think the teams have a big plan for, where the fantasy community is a little down on Pickens and the fantasy community is not so hot on Quentin Johnston as they are like Jordan Addison and Jackson Smith and Jigba. So basically I've given myself a couple of outs here with the wide receiver spot, and these guys also might get better over the course of the season. So I don't hate it. It's a little dynasty like for my wide receiver build, but if one of those guys hits, I'm feeling great. And if 2 of them hit, then I've really got something. And Quentin Johnston's interesting because his ADP's pushed way down, but they used the first round draft pick on him. We've seen Mike Williams miss a ton of time over the years. We've seen Keenan Allen, miss time and also is getting a lot older. So there's definitely some outs with the Quentin Johnston pick. And, he's a guy that I had behind Addison and certainly behind Jackson Smith and Jigba. But, man, if he ends up having weeks where he's close to the number 1 target for Justin Herbert, or at least the number 2 target, that offense takes a step forward, he's something. He could be a wide receiver 2 out there.
He'll smash ADP if they get one injury. And you know, with Mike Williams, I mean, he's
and Keenan, both of them are going to get hurt.
Keenan's getting up there in age, and Kellen Moore's going to throw the ball a ton.
Oh, you got that right.
I mean, if Johnston can figure it out in his rookie season, I mean, especially when it comes to the money round, he's a guy that could be, big point getter at the end of the season.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of, I think that's the time we see value when there's the perceived log jams at receiver, or sometimes it happens at running back, and these guys get pushed down and then they just absolutely smash. There's a few team situations right now that people think are so crowded, and there's going to be guys just really, really separate from the pack and beat. It happens
Kenneth
every
Walker
single
was
year.
a great example last year. I mean, a guy that was middle, and then Rashad Penny obviously was still there, and then set the world on fire.
No doubt about that. Mojo taking Cortland Sutton. That's interesting pick there.
You think he's going to get traded?
I mean, there's a chance he could. I think that they have no table talk, but I think that they have a lot of faith in Marvin Mims, and that opening things up there at wide receiver would make sense. And also, I don't think Cortland Sutton's in the long-term plans. So
he wasn't great last year for somebody who was on him a ton. He was not. Russell Wilson was terrible. The offense was terrible, but
Terp, I think we took him together on a draft. I think
we did.
And I also took him in a draft with Nelson Sousa, and I also took him in a draft with Dan Williamson. So there was a lot of sharp money on Cortland Sutton last year. He burned a lot of people. I don't know. I think he might not be a guy I really want to draft, but I think that there's a guy like Darren, might see him as a bounce back guy and a guy that the community's down on and want to take some shots there.
I never felt, looking back at last year, I felt so good. My draft ending in I believe it was it was my home league. My 3-4 turn was Sutton and Michael Pittman. I felt so good. And I was
convinced. It's hard not to. I mean, both those guys
look at what happened.
Very popular last year for all of us, and neither of them. I mean, Cortland Sutton, watching the Broncos play last year was one of the most painful experiences probably in fantasy football history for at least me, and I'm sure most people. I mean,
there
was just awful.
Dead last in points per game last year.
Awful.
But Sean Payton, there's going to be stability there. There's going to be a better offensive approach, and I don't know.
Definitely a bounce back situation for Russ. I think he's if you're waiting on a quarterback, a guy that you could start.
Stop it, Terp.
Dan Williamson with the snipe of Jamison Williams. I would have loved him at the 909.
So good.
I took him in
perfect for your structure.
Dan wasn't going to let me have that. That's great value for Dan.
I just don't think there's a more fun fantasy team than the Lions this year. Just a bunch of young
Lions are not going to make the playoffs.
I'm not talking about them as a team. I'm talking about them
fantasy. I care
about
they're
going
to.
But
fun as hell.
They're going to
fantasy-wise
score some points, man. They're going to score some points.
I wanted to ask, you mentioned both of you were talking about Sutton getting traded. The two most popular guys in terms of just popping up over and over. Well, if you could throw in Derrick Henry, so let's go down. But Dalvin or Cortland Sutton, which one are you hoping maybe gets traded more? Do you guys have any preference on that?
Well, I mean, I think Dalvin's probably more pretty likely to move teams.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, I would kind of like Cortland Sutton to be moved because I have a lot of FFPC dynasty leagues with Judy and with hold on, I'm OTC here, fellas. So I had Deshaun Watson in the queue. Deshaun Watson goes there at the 908. I have another wide receiver and a pretty ugly one and a pretty ugly running back, but guys who I think are going to have weekly floors. Let me take a look at the board here. Do I risk Noah Riddell, Austin, and Austin do not have quarterbacks. I don't mind having a little bit of Dak Prescott to go with Tony Pollard. A little correlation there. I think I'm going to push that. And I think I'm going to do that. Let me just double check one thing. Yeah, you know what? I think I'm going to go Dak here. I think I'm going to go little Dak correlation with Pollard and bet on that one.
Is there any hindsight 2020 for you of passing on Brandon Cooks for Quentin Johnston, knowing that you were going to come around and take Dak? Because I think Brandon Cooks is a guy that we do kind of forget came on 2 years ago and 3 years ago, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons with no one at QB, right? So he's
to me, it's
talented.
To me, I get the argument, and I certainly considered Brandon Cooks there, but I just think he's a purgatory pick He's the kind of guy that's not going to move my team, and I think Quentin Johnston could move the team. So I'd rather take the swing than take like a floor guy right there. I think that's kind of pick.
Looks his ceiling is very low.
Yeah, like I think he's a wide receiver 3 if it works out well, and I don't think he's a guy you're super excited about. Quentin Johnston could be a wide receiver 5, or he could be a high end one. I don't know. It's weird in Dallas. I would bet on Cooks versus Gallup, but yeah, Terp, you're right. If they're both on the field a lot, there's a chance that Gallup has more touchdowns, and if in that secondary receiver role, that could be a big driver of the points.
Would you say Brandon Cooks is almost a better best ball player in terms of he's probably going to have just a couple of big weeks touchdown wise and less so for season long?
I think that you can make an argument for that, but I think Cooks is a wide receiver 3. I just think
regardless.
I think he's a wide receiver 3-4. And I think he's the kind of guy you could throw in your flex as needed, but you're never going to feel great about it. I mean, this is CeeDee Lamb's offense. We haven't seen Brandon Cooks as the number 2 target in a long time. I think Terp, correct me if I'm wrong, the last time he was a number 2 or 3 was in the Rams, those Rams loaded receiver cores. So it's been a while since he's taken a secondary role, and a lot of times being the top target really helps these guys. In situations like he was in Houston, like 2 seasons ago, 2021, he had the incredible season with some games where he was like a 40% target share and completely garbage offenses. So I don't know if I believe he's still a talented player, but was he masked slightly by the fact that there was really no target competition? Now he's in a place where there's a lot of dudes, and he could struggle a little bit.
Coming up soon here, so we're always excited to hear, and then we can probably let you go so you can focus on your draft.
No, I love how you guys are doing this. This is awesome. I listened into you and Billy Muzio. He's going to probably lecture me on my Bijan pick. He hates him, but I know
he was on first, so we made sure we talked about it. I was asking him why I didn't take him before, because I agreed with his take that got tortured on Twitter a couple weeks ago.
No, and I respect. There's some. You've got to take a stand with this sort of player, but I just think at the end of the day, Terp, he's too good. He's too good of a receiver. He's the kind of guy that can put up a 30-point week.
Extremely talented. I mean,
and these guys like Eckler and McCaffrey, we haven't seen a player this late in their career. We haven't seen a guy in their 8th season or 7th season hitting as their RB1 overall. Like the last year Eckler, and then before that it was Jamal Charles in 2013. That's the last time a 6th-year running back was running back 1 overall. So these guys are great athletes. These guys are great receivers, but that's still an outlier bet on those 2 older players. Now, a guy like Saquon, could he outscore Bijan? Sure. And obviously McCaffrey and Eckler, have that incredible ability we've seen. But this kind of a young player like Bijan, I mean, Terp, I just think it's going to be crazy. Okay, so Zay Flowers was my cue. He gets taken. This is snipe time.
Sniped.
I have a very, very ugly queue here. I've gone back to the wide receiver for my wide receiver 5, and I am between Jacoby Myers and Juju Smith-Schuster. I do like Jacoby Myers a lot. I've had some Jacoby, but I am going to bet on Juju just being a weekly guy that gets a lot of targets in like a little bit more. It's terribly gross. It's a terrible, it feels very gross, but I think I'm going to fall on this grenade, and I'm going to take the falling Juju in the 10th round and hope that he's, a 130 target, weird 125, 130 target season. Yeah, it definitely is possible. Double checking one thing. Yeah. You know what? I'm going to go with it. I'm going with Juju. Beat up. Guys, this was it was, hey guys, it's a little bit structure there. And also I think he is the wide receiver 1 in a terrible offense. And I think he's going to be Jacoby Myers there. Whereas Jacoby Myers is on a new team, but he has to compete with Devontae Adams. And we have a quarterback injury already with Garoppolo and the threat of Josh Jacobs. I mean, besides Ramondre Stevenson, they need a secondary.
They need playmakers.
Yeah. And they gave, Juju Smith-Schuster a contract. And I think that they need him. So I don't love it. But let's put it like this. I think that he has potential to outscore Brandon Cooks. And I think Cooks, if you put him in New England, I'd like him more too, but they're just so devoid of receivers that Juju has to be a thing, at least early on.
Has to be.
And he kind of gives me a little bit of coverage where if Juju has some usable weeks in the first 6 weeks of the year, that could be like a bridge to Quentin Johnston.
Yep.
So,
sir, Hell of a
Guys,
draft so
Always
far.
a pleasure.
Appreciate you having me on, Terp. We got to draft the best ball team, brother.
We'll definitely do it soon.
All right, take care, guys. See you.
See you, bud.
Thanks for joining. Terp, I mean, we're just going to keep rolling. Our next guest, Dr. Habib Agbatoba. Let me try and get him on. We have so many people in our waiting room right now. They're going to push
You
up
just
the
bring
screen.
two on at the same time. What's up, brother?
What's happening? What's happening? How you guys doing?
How we doing?
Doing amazing. Doing amazing.
Habib, out of the 8th spot today, 4 receivers to start, and then been peppering running backs, and then you're sprinkling in your QB and tight end the last one. How you feeling about your draft so far?
I kind of like it. I think I just let it come to me. With the exception of that first round pick, that 8th spot to me is just, it's tough. Unless somebody takes Bijan or someone else. I usually like to try to get Hill or Cup there, and then after that, a lot of these guys are just kind of all the same. Yeah. So I had anticipated Tony Pollard following to me. At that point, I figured, let me just go ahead and take the dip on Devontae Adams right now. Obviously, just so much bad news coming out of the Raiders organization in Las Vegas that, he's seeing his ADP drop, but he's still an elite wide receiver. He's been, proven to put up wide receiver 1 numbers with a number of quarterbacks. So let's just hope Jimmy G can stay healthy. If not, I'm gonna need them to bring in some reinforcements.
I mean, if you want anyone to boost that AJ Brown pick, I mean, Dave is your guy that I'm sure could
Fly, Eagles,
AJ
fly
Brown to the moon.
Oh man,
he's the right pick. Did you consider Bijan Robinson at all?
Not right now in drafts. At some point, I'll probably start to try to acquire some shares, but I just think his ADP right now is, probably as high as it's going to get. Barring any injury to to anyone, any running backs on that team, Algiers, specifically. I think his ADP, I think that 7th, 8th pick is around his ADP. So I felt no need to reach there, and just again, knowing kind of the running backs that are available to us later in the draft,
Of course,
it just makes more sense for me to go ahead and lock in that wide receiver. And that's kind of how I'm approaching drafts to date, is really trying to, get a nice combination of 2 wide receiver ones. I also kicked the tire. I really thought about Amon-Ra there, but I knew in this room that he was likely not going to fall, but I figured let me just go with the guy with the highest ADP.
There'll be a couple of questions in the chat. They were saying, at any point did Jalen Hurts in round 2 cross your mind to stack with AJ Brown? Or
no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I find that unnecessary. I mean, I understand that, I understand we all kind of want to make some sexy picks and, have some ooh-ah moments, but, I don't know, like Jalen Hurts that early, there's just too many quality players. For me, like the first 2 rounds, I'm really just looking for guys who could potentially give me 300 points plus, out of the wide receiver, running back, and flex positions, and potentially the tight end position. So I'm more than comfortable just kind of waiting on quarterbacks and really always trying to identify, okay, what potential quarterback could really kind of, take off this year. I'm going to make a nice little pick here too, as well. If if one of my players does not go, I'm going to piss off a couple people here.
Do you believe in stacking in these or are you just kind of just best available when it comes to quarterback?
Yeah, I definitely think it's nice. I think, I got to go back. I created kind of like a little grid of
You go back to when you won Allen and Diggs on Monday night. I
know.
I remember watching that. I mean, I'm going to guess going into that game, you probably were like, I don't know. That was the second half of the back-to-back, correct?
I got to tell you, I was, oh man, this is going to make it a hard decision for me.
Piss some people off, whatever it takes.
No, I can't pass this guy up.
Big fan.
Yeah. But no. I think definitely I try to stack if I can, but sometimes it's just hard. I mean, especially this year, I think more than before, we're seeing the quarterbacks really get pushed up the board.
Pushed up.
So in the past, when I stack, it's because I've been able to get these quarterbacks later. Josh Allen that year he wasn't going anywhere near the 3rd round.
Nope.
So for me, I think I'm just going to try and, figure out that late round quarterback that, has his career year. Last year was, Justin Fields. So those guys always exist. And really all I need is a 3-week span, right? My co-host counterpart, Theo, he finished top 5 in the Players Championship last year, and his quarterbacks were I want to say Jared Goff and what's the backup quarterback out of the Jets? White. I always forget his first name.
Mike White.
Mike White. Those were his two quarterbacks going into the tournament. So I mean, I know it's like nice to kind of like look at the stats and definitely, I think majority of people want to play the numbers, but there are multiple ways to win. So see, he doubled up. He doubled up on Anthony Richardson. I like that move. Just kind of waiting and then like getting a Tua and Anthony Richardson or Tua or Anthony Richardson and Dak. I think that's a nice savvy move. That's the year Lamar broke out. That I think a lot of us did that, and it paid off big time.
Yeah, the Tua pick. I just think if Tua, if he just stays healthy.
He's
but
a great value in draft
the
right now.
value is unreal. Unreal.
Gosh,
absolutely. The weapons are insane.
Unreal. I mean, and he produced when he was healthy, but then, as Terp says every time we talk about him, just one concussion, and that generally gonna be a career. Ender. Just scary. You're going to be on the clock soon, but I do want to touch back on the Roshan Johnston pick. I know you're about to be up, so we'll go over your pick here, but then I want to hear about the Roshan love.
Yeah, so let me go ahead and lock this in real quick. I just sure up the tight end room here. Yeah, so for me, definitely, like I said, I've been really approaching drafts, like trying to hammer wide receiver heavy early on. I do believe in the wide receiver dead zone. These guys just look so sexy, and then at the end, and during the season,
ugly.
Yeah, it gets ugly. You never feel comfortable. You never know when to start them. Then you sit them, and then they go off. So I like the idea of having like a true number one wide receiver or a guy like T. Higgins, where I can roll with the downs because his ups and his highs are so elevated, and I know at the end of the year, if he stays healthy, he's going to produce as like an elite wide receiver too.
And one Jamar Chase injury, I mean, he's
absolutely. So I love where I got him. But like the Roshan pick, he's definitely one of these running backs that I'm looking at. Look at these ambiguous backfields, and right now I know Herbert's at the top of the depth charts, but you got to think they brought in a player, they drafted Roshan, they talked them up. I know they talk up all rookies, but hearing them specifically kind of, talk about what, they're excited about, I think is, what gives me the idea that there's a shot and there's a chance. And I don't necessarily know that they view Khalil Herbert as like an every down back. So he's another guy. He's one injury away, but he's also, potentially a training camp away. If he shines in training camp and he proves that he's, he can kind of do it all. He can play in between the tackles. He can pass protect, which we know he's done in college, and he can catch out of the backfield. I mean, to me, I think he's potentially one of the, the David Montgomery replacement, and then maybe Khalil Herbert maintains his role as like a change-up back.
Yeah, I mean, Herbert's size, his attributes, it doesn't project as a lead back. I mean, Roshan, I think, for me, I was so high on him in the pre-draft process, and then you see him falling, and I remember it's like, damn. And then he goes to the Bears, and you're like,
wear and tear, which is good. I mean,
then he goes to the Bears, and you're like, this isn't that bad. Like, all right, like of all the landing spots,
it's a great spot for him.
Yeah.
I honestly, I think it's like an excellent spot, but I think it's like fantasy players. The uncertainty drops his ADP. The ambiguity drops his ADP. But that's the perfect spot for him. A spot where he can like literally, Cream can truly rise to the top. And it's a young team, so there's no hurry in trying to get a vet out there.
No. He's a guy that when it comes down to the end could be a starting running back for you. Early on, he might have some, some struggles, but you're not worried about that. You're just worried about when it comes down to making the money.
Honestly, that's exactly how I draft my teams. I'm literally thinking about who on my team can like really like win me the money and can really like, propel my team those last 3 weeks. And I try to get a combination, like a guy like James Conner, like who I'm getting in the 7th, 8th round. Yeah. In no way do I project him to like play all 16s or to be there in the playoffs for me.
But you're okay with that.
But I'm okay. I love players like this who have like a defined role. It's like a free preview for me, where everyone's kind of guessing this first week, like, as far as, okay, let me put Jordan Addison in and let me see, let me put some of these guys in and let me see. And you never know what they're going to produce. But James Conner on a bad team with like literally no one behind him, on a guy who can like catch passes, play third downs, he's going to be in a hurry up. He's going to be like, he's going to be on the field when they're coming from behind. Like, it doesn't matter if he gets you 40 yards. If he gets me like 4 to 5 catches and he falls in the end zone, he's going to finish as a top, RB1. So I just need him for a good 4 to 5 weeks. Let me figure out the rest of my team, let the league shake out, and then I'm good. So I like the balance there with him and Roshan.
I mean, I think Terp, we might have talked about in our last one is if you're starting receiver heavy, I think Connor's a guy. I love the value. He's going at 7-2.
P-Ryan's a guy I've been targeting in every draft because you know what his early season role is going to be.
Absolutely.
I mean, Javonte Williams is just a wild question right now. I mean, coming off that injury, I don't care what they show you in camp. I don't think he's going to be, out there for a while. So P-Ryan is the guy. And he's a guy that I think is a great value in drafts right now.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. I mean, I'm not buying it at all. He had a horrific ACL injury that was just, obviously more than the ACL. And I think it's just going to take him a while. I would not be surprised at all to see him on the pup. And then even then, it's just going to be a while. He's not a guy that I think that they want to rush back at all.
No.
By all
accounts. You heard the comments, right, from the Sean Payton. I know it was like mostly centered around Greg Dulcich's question. But if you kind of like listened in, like, closely when he was talking about the joker positions, he was like the joker position could be a running back or a tight end or a running back.
Yeah.
So, guys who can kind of catch passes and be in
which P-Ryan can, you saw.
Absolutely. And sometimes it is just as simple as saying, okay, he was with the Saints. He had Kamara. He turned him into a pass catching running back. Okay, so they brought in P-Ryan. That was one of their key acquisitions.
And brought nobody else in.
Brought no one else in. So, we'll see. I know, you always got to tell yourself a story with your team.
Of course. Every team is a different story.
Exactly.
I mean, as you said, I don't think I've heard a single good shred of Javonte news. It's all been pup. That knee is torn up. I feel bad for him. He's such a talent. But yeah, he went into 8-2 here. I like Samaje. I mean, you guys can tell me, I might be doing some revisionist history, but in my mind, it feels like last year was you hit that running back dead zone hard and just brutal. This year it's flipped. You hit a wide receiver dead zone early, and you can find some running back value late. So in those mid rounds.
Absolutely.
Coming up on the clock. So we've been loving. Terp, I can't speak for you, but I've been loving hearing the thought process as these people draft live with us.
Perfect.
Yeah. And like this strategy for me is kind of like my bread and butter. It's like I just avoid tight ends early on. It's like, I try to pick a position to punt, and in my mind,
it's a popular position this year.
Yeah.
I mean, they all kind of look the same after the first, handful.
Couple, yeah. You took Dalton Schultz. I believe you're a big Texans fan. I see you the Texans propaganda that I see comes from you and all that love. Dalton Schultz is almost being a little underrated as a target in that with that team, rookie quarterback. What are your thoughts on Schultz? Are you high on him?
I absolutely think so. I wouldn't say I'm high on him. Honestly, like in a vacuum, I would have taken Juwan Johnson.
Okay.
But I said, let me see. Potentially there might have been a shot of him like coming back to me, and then I would have been able to double up with Schultz and Juwan, and then I would have just been done at tight end. But obviously that didn't happen. But I do like Schultz. I think that there's a lot of unknown there. I think really honestly, it just starts with the offensive coordinator and what he's going to do. We obviously know he's coming from San Francisco. Shanahan system. Is there going to be some variations? Those things we just don't know. We aren't going to be privy to. But it's a system that's just void of wide receiver talents, And I think really, honestly, any of those guys could pop. That, the Houston Texans wide receiving corps, like, I would urge everyone to at least take a shot on at least one guy. I think Schultz is a good bet to potentially lead them in receptions. Again, it doesn't matter like if he's athletic. We've seen that he can produce. He's a guy who can get open. He has sure hands, and he can be a threat in the red zone. And if they design an offense that, is an offense where he doesn't have to win one-on-one battles and instead it's, a bunch of misdirection, well, then we're looking great, especially with a quarterback who's athletic, who's mobile, but who ideally will kind of fall into that, thought process of, the younger tight ends kind of leaning on their or the younger quarterbacks leaning on their tight end. So I do like it. We don't know what we're going to get from Mechie. It's going to be his first year back in 2 or 3 years.
Hoping good things. Very highly invested early,
Yeah, I have a ton of them. I think, at first we saw his ADP really low, so I was just smashing him in the later rounds. And then it kind of started to rise, and now it's kind of come back down again. But Robert Woods could surprise. I think people forget, they kind of cast him off being old and you're coming off an ACL, but 2 years removed now from an ACL. So,
Yeah.
who knows? Who knows? I mean, but I do like Schultz there as a potential guy who can lead them in targets.
I mean, I feel like, as I said, I hear Balky hyping up the Packers. I might hear you hyping up these Texans and get invested in something. I mean, someone is going to produce.
Somebody from this offense is going to be a very, very important fantasy player this year.
Now you are on the clock.
Question of who.
Oh, damn. He took Gainwell. I knew he was going to do that. Theo, he's just constantly sniping me.
He said the same
and you were
thing about
sniping
you.
him. Exactly.
Just gone.
Some of those were spike picks too. I was like, I know you
They're
want
the
them.
best.
I'm getting you back. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and pop the cherry here on defenses. Normally I just like to wait for Dallas, but I like I think I like the start for Philly. Actually, let me go back. I always got to take a look.
New England, Minnesota, Washington. I think it's their start.
Yeah, New England, I like. Minnesota, that's a toss-up. Tampa Bay, I like. Washington, I like. Rams, Jets. Here, let's go
Very
ahead.
good start.
Philly cooks Minnesota too every year. Minnesota
single
is
year.
nothing.
Home opener. It'll be wild down there.
Yeah,
Dude, that's gonna Thursday night.
they're loaded. They're loaded. I really like Dallas
Thursday
defense. I really like that. If they had a nice soft matchup opening night, they'd probably be my number one overall defense. I love what they've done in the offseason.
You certainly popped the bubble on defense. They're going to start flying. We're going to let you go, sir, for your last about 5 rounds. Thank you for joining.
Right.
Have a good one, man.
All right, thanks for having me on, guys.
Yep.
We're going to bring on 2 people now. In a second,
a little behind on schedule.
I mean, this was that was a lot.
We knew this was going to happen.
That was a lot. I just want to say, I see in the chat, Terp, someone saying that Ishkabibbles has the best sub in Philly. If they're talking about cheesesteaks, just wrong. I saw that pop up.
Stop. It's not.
I don't know what they're talking about. That just had.
I hope they're not talking about cheesesteaks.
They said sub, but I'd like to hear what they were talking about. It's not Ishkabibbles. It's Angelo's.
Angelo's is 100% the answer.
Yep, Angelo. I'm a Woodrow's guy too. I don't know if you ever had Woodrow's South Street. I would recommend. All right, next 2 guests, Terp. Having them on right now. He's been waiting for a while. Dan Williamson and Mark Garcia at high low.
What's up?
Damn you, Dan.
They're back again after last night.
I went on his show last night and just provided all my sleepers and guys I'm over ADP. And then you look at Dan's roster tonight, it's all those guys.
I listen well. What can I say?
Dan, you're picking 5th. Mark, you're picking 7th in this draft. How you guys feeling about the draft so far? I'll scroll up so that people can see both of your guys' picks so far. But how you guys feeling? Besides Dan stealing all your picks.
All right, I'll go first then. I was cooking through 6, and then round 7 when I picked Pittman. It was like almost 2 full rounds behind ADP, and I was just like, oh man! But it felt so gross. And then at round 8 on, it was just like every wide receiver that with upside in the late season that I wanted, just off the board every time. I'm going to go on mute because my kid is in the back.
All good. Terp, that's been a consistent theme. We've been hearing a lot of people complaining that
This is an aggressive wide receiver draft. I mean, if you don't get them early, that dead zone will get you real quick.
Dan, how you feeling about your draft? Love the Cooper Kupp pick. We kind of talked about him versus Tyreek, but me and Terp are both Cooper Kupp guys through and through, so we love that pick.
Yeah, I'm kind of I'm closer to indifferent, but I knew that Mark wanted Kupp, so I figured we needed to get things started.
Nobody likes Kupp more than he does. Nobody. Every draft he posts has Kupp.
Yep, absolutely. So, I figured that was probably the way to go. And I started off with some real old guys. So I've been chasing youth ever since, probably to my detriment. I have no idea who I'm going to be starting in the first, couple weeks, but hopefully those things will sort themselves out.
I got my helper now. Y'all are screwed.
What's his name?
This is Benjamin.
What's up, Ben?
Hey, Ben.
How we doing? You got to help Daddy.
You can say hi.
I love it.
Nope.
Mark, I know you're about to be on the clock here, but Dan, I just had a quick question. You had a run here from Devon Achane, Jameson Williams, Rashee Rice, Kendra Miller, Jaden Reed, and then even Romeo Doubs. You just hammering these young guys. Are you in on kind of the rookie sophomores?
Yeah, it goes back before that. I mean, you start with Jordan Addison, and it's pretty much all rookies and sophomores. Up until Singletary Edwards-Helaire.
yeah,
So
I wasn't even looking that far. There we go.
yeah,
I mean, you're anytime I see it, your Twitter profile, I mean, the swaggiest draft outfit there was. Jordan
No doubt.
drift out.
So it's very on brand for me to make sure I grab myself a Viking, and preferably a Vikings receiver. I couldn't have Jefferson because of course Ron got the number 1 pick, and he's been busily sniping me over there ever since. Like I wanted Dobbins, he got him. Wanted Najee Harris, he got him.
Did you want 5th round Dalvin Cook?
I would have been not mad at it for sure.
I think you're lying. We always make 2 bets every year. If you want to get on the Dalvin Cook train, my bank account needs to get a little higher.
Yeah, I mean I think Dalvin Cook at 17 is a great pick. Or running back 17 is a great pick for sure.
Okay, Daddy.
But even in the later rounds, Ron's over there. He's got Van Jefferson, Tyler Conklin. Those were a couple guys I was looking for too. So
Rondell Moore, it's a good spot for him.
Yeah, Rondell Moore, that's a great spot. So he's got a really nice team. I'm liking what he's doing out of the one hole. But of course, when you're in the one hole, you damn well better like your team. you got those first 3 picks, man. That's a huge leg up on everybody else.
Mark, quick question for you.
Yeah.
A common theme has been this. Some of these in these mid rounds, you're saying it's gross. The Brian Robinson pick, Terp has been your guy, arguably the number Antonio Gibson, right? And you've been all over that,
correct.
and obviously all the news has been positive for Gibson. We haven't heard a lot about Robinson. I was wondering if you could walk us through that pick. Are you still in on Robinson, just as carries are there, touch goal line work, or does the Antonio Gibson buzz scare you completely off of him by September?
So all the 1 week season listeners will know that I'm an Antonio Gibson guy, but now that you have Robinson and Antonio Gibson converging in ADP, and now in this draft, Antonio Gibson went before Brian Robinson. It's like, I'm not going to pretend to know what the effect of him being shot in the leg before the season last year was, and they still fed him 18 touches, over 18 touches a game. So if you're getting an 18 touch running back in the 9th round, I mean, you kind of just have to put all biases aside. I'm not a Brian Robinson guy, but at that point, just kind of have to be.
It's all trust in Eric Bieniemy. We hope as Gibson stands to do the right thing, right?
You said with Michael Pittman, it was a little ugly of a pick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You just off on him, or you just took him because of the value? Is Richardson scare you? Obviously, first year quarterback.
Yeah, for sure. And what Pittman brings to the offense, Richardson struggles at, right? So he struggles, like Pittman's the prototypical X-type wide receiver. He's the intermediate threat. His ADOT is like middle of the league. So you get that, and that's like the areas of the field where Richardson struggles, because that's typically the areas of the field that are covered tighter, right? So usually these players with higher ADOTs, or the players that work underneath, are able to generate that separation at target. And if Richardson struggles, he's got a cannon of an arm. And if he sees people covered, I worry that he's just going to tuck and run and do what he knows how to do, which is probably going to influence Michael Pittman's target volume for the negative. But I mean, on Underdog, he's going in the 4th round, and on FFPC, getting him in the, what was it, the 7th round? I just kind of, it was just in one of those picks. Yeah, it was just one of those picks where it was like, it feels gross, but I won't be able to sleep tonight if I pass that.
I mean, just looking at this contest last week, his ADP's been 6'6", so you're getting him a whole round below ADP. So
yeah,
that wide receiver room is a fun wide receiver room. They just have no quarterback play, which is scary.
You don't know that they don't have a quarterback play. For somebody who's an Anthony Richardson guy like myself, it's still an unknown.
Anthony Richardson legit has top 5 quarterback within his range of outcomes, and he has like quarterback 25 within his range of outcomes. We just don't know. Yeah.
Dan, what are your thoughts on the Colts? I don't believe, I have to scroll up, I don't believe you've taken any here, but are you in on any Colts, or are you kind of off with the concerns in the air about it?
I'm a little more out than in general, but Anthony Richardson, where he went, was a fantastic pick. I didn't mind Mark's pick of Pittman either. I mean, the spot he got him, he got a nice value on him. Wide receiver 37. That's, he normally goes a little bit earlier than that, so you got to be happy with that. And I'm a little bit more down on Jonathan Taylor than most, just because I think he's not going to, he's never been a big pass catcher, but he's probably going to get even less now.
We are agreeing on a lot this year, and I don't really like that. Usually we're on opposite sides of everything.
Yeah, I don't know. We usually find a couple things that we can vehemently disagree on.
Did you just call Dan stupid?
Yeah,
I don't
think
know.
so.
I might call myself stupid.
Yeah, he's ahead though in the.
I listen to all your shows. I try to find like one thing that I don't agree with, just so we can make a bet like we do every year. Usually the ones I win, but I'm really struggling this year. Most of the guys that you like, I like too, and I'm very worried about it.
Yeah, I'm guessing I grossed out Mark with my last pick, Tyquan Thornton, because that's a Patriot. So.
Well, he was my him and a guy that's still on the board that we talked about is like the only two Patriots that I mentioned that were feasible outside of Ramondre.
Yeah, I think those are probably the two that I'm most interested in as well. I mean, Juju's all right, but
it's just such a gross pick.
It is. It just I have to have the barf bucket next to me.
Oh, dude, I look away and Pierre Strong is even taken. This draft is savage, dude.
It is.
So savage.
It's always fun being the outsider, watching people just get sniped.
It's awesome. So much easier than being.
Yeah, and speaking of sniped, I just got done with. I was hoping to get pair up Thornton and Gesicki, just like I paired up Jaden Reed and Romeo Dubs.
Not one Patriot, but two.
I was going to ask you on that. Are you just betting on the Packers offense, or you just with the unknown?
I'm just betting that one of those guys really kind of has to emerge. So, there are other ways I can play it too. But now I have to make a pick. Damn it.
Yeah.
This is when it gets real painful.
Yeah.
Defenses and kickers, it gets painful.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing is if you haven't taken your defense or your kicker yet so far, when you get totally stuck, you can just go out and do a Tyler Bass or something like that and feel fine.
Safe.
Yeah. Just punt.
We've liked talking like the players, like analyzing the pick. I'm not having you analyze Tyler Bass. Oh, not having you. not having
a second.
Not having you.
Wait, what?
Daniel Carlson is money. That's all I know. I'm going with the kicker. Carlson's just a lock. He refuses.
Yeah, but I mean that offense is so gross. I mean, it might actually be so bad that he can't even get the field goals. So. That's my big concern. Otherwise, I probably would have had Carlson over Bass. But
correction, Dan, their red zone offense is so gross.
Yeah, their red zone offense, but I mean their whole offense might be gross this year.
Yeah, I don't know.
I've got concerns.
The Raiders just looked at the Patriots and said, "Yeah, that's what we want to do." They looked at that offense, and McDaniel said, "Yeah, that's what we're going for."
There's a shot that Brian Hoyer might be the starter week one.
Yeah, it's tough.
I refuse to believe Garoppolo is not going to be.
I refuse to believe it too, but
the Raiders have turned into one of the worst run teams in the entire NFL. I mean, they've always been kind of bouncing around the bottom, but I think they might have hit it this year.
I hit the limit of trying to push this kid, so I got to bounce.
You're good, brother. Have a good one.
Yeah,
thanks for joining. Dan, and we'll let you go in soon for these last couple of rounds. We'll because we got 3 rounds.
You guys got
Todd's hyperventilating in the waiting room right now because he's not going to get enough time.
Yeah, Dan, he's dancing around, I'm sure.
I mean, what we're going to do is we're just going to keep going. Draft is over, and we'll just have these people review their teams. But Dan, my last question I'm going to leave you with: Clyde has burned me every single year since he's come into the league. It's never been able to get off of him. Can you try and sell me on him as just a late round sleeper, or any basis behind that pick?
Round 15
lottery ticket.
How bad can he burn me in round 15?
Yeah.
That's basically it. I'm just at that point it's like, hey, I'm grabbing a guy on a high powered offense. I'm looking at I have 2 starting running backs with Chubb and Jones. And then I've got A-Chain and Miller, who are both rookies. So I wanted to bounce back with Singletary and then Clyde Edwards-Helaire, a couple veterans who can probably give me some steady points if I need to. Because especially if some of those wide receivers take a little while to fire, I could definitely need that.
Nice. I'm in an abusive relationship with Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah, anybody who's in that kind of relationship
you're betting
with him,
you're telling yourself the story that Pacheco is not going to be the guy, and hopefully he does it, or maybe gets traded to the Bengals with Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is Edwards-Helaire, until he got hurt, he was pumping out quite a few points.
Remember that week one a couple of years
15
ago.
points a week.
People drafted him number 1 overall, and Twitter was blowing up.
The Texans.
Yeah.
Ugh, man.
One of my favorite defenses to draft right here. Bang. Patriots.
They're gonna have to be good.
Well, they're always right up there. I mean,
Yeah.
they just
So
are.
many division, man. That division's so good. So
Yeah, those offenses are scary. But I mean, New England, they have ball hawks too, right? I feel like they're always consistently scoring on special teams because they need
They
to.
get the job done defensively.
That
Yep.
they do. Dan,
Exactly.
thank you for hopping on. Sorry we couldn't have you on any longer, but we got
Always
some
a
more people in the
pleasure.
waiting room.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. Terp will find something to bet on for sure, and Aidan, we'll definitely see you guys out in Vegas too. So
Absolutely.
it,
We'll see you then. Terp got confirmation in the chat. He was talking about cheesesteaks. Astonishing. Ishkabibbles.
I mean,
What are we doing?
doesn't even make the top 5. I don't know if it makes the top 10.
Yeah,
No.
it's just not even close. Not even close. Terp, we're gonna go kind of off schedule. Todd Miller's in the waiting room, drafting out of the 6th spot. We're gonna bring him on. Todd, thank you for joining our stream, sir.
Hey! What's up,
you,
brother?
How you feeling about your draft so far?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and
Can you hear
clear.
Very well.
Oh, right on. I wasn't expecting to be on next.
Yeah, we're trying to.
Where's Darren at?
Darren,
He's hiding.
we're going ahead of schedule because we need to. We need to.
Cheers to that.
Yeah, you were in the queue.
Right on.
How you feeling about your draft? Out of the 6th spot.
I'm kind of it's all right. It's I was happy with the first 4 rounds. Looking back on it, I think the mistake I made was taking a quarterback too early. I could have really used another solid running back right there. I wish I would have waited on quarterback a little bit more, but I got a lot of maybes with if Cook gets traded and Madison steps up. We haven't quite figured out what who's going to be the person, Herbert or Foreman or Roshan at this point, but I am a firm believer that Rashad Penny is going to outscore DeAndre Swift by a lot this year, so I'm happy with that pick.
I mean, as long as Eagles win, I'm fine with it. I don't agree with you, but
yeah.
Are you
He's got to stay healthy, of course.
I mean,
The stipulation is he has to stay healthy, but
that
there's
might
a
be the
reason
biggest
why
stipulation
DeAndre
in
Swift
fantasy.
didn't get any of the goal line
Rashad Penny's a
carries
talented kid.
Both
He
of
just
them
can't
are.
stay healthy.
Yeah,
Do you, so you
6 yards a carry, yeah. And
So
there's a
you're not-
reason why Swift didn't get the goal line carries in Detroit. So, yeah, I could. I wish I would have skipped quarterback, but other than that, I'm okay with it so far.
so you're basing kind of your Penny love over Swift just based on how he was used on Detroit at all. Turpin, honestly, you would know better too, right? I believe wasn't it Deuce Staley was the Lions? It felt like just the Lions just hated him, and that's why he just
It
didn't
seemed
get
that
anything.
way. There's a lot of things that he was not. Like, he was the hardest worker.
Yeah,
Nagging injuries. Obviously, Jamal Williams was just dominant last year inside the goal line. So I just think Swift is the talent's still there. You just figure a fresh start maybe gets to that value. But I like Rashad Penny too. If they didn't add Swift, I was fine with Penny. It's just Penny could be a league-winning upside type of player if he stays healthy, and that's just always been the big if.
Especially in that round.
I mean, he smashes. He's been smashing. Any chance he got this when he's healthy. The problem is it's a short period, and it just
that's
teams
the
like
problem.
Eagles are
Staying
going to
healthy,
care
right?
about that. If he can't stay healthy, then he's going to get pushed to the back.
Well, the good news is that his seemed like his injuries the first few years were very soft tissue kind of stuff that's problematic for
Nothing major
players. Yeah, but last year he got that ankle rolled over. It wasn't even his fault. It wasn't something that it wasn't a soft tissue type of injury. So yeah, freak injury. So and he was killing it right up until that point. So I'm hoping this is the year that he comes back. But him and Swift are both, injury prone. So you might as well take the guy that's going to get the goal line carries, and especially if it's going to come 5 rounds later.
just all fantasy owners are going to love when Boston Scott's getting the goal line carries for the Eagles.
You just never know with the Eagles. I mean,
It's
they
gonna
love
happen.
Scott when they play the Giants. It's a
Oh my
guaranteed
God.
touchdown.
It's funny how Boston Scott against the Giants is a borderline like you have to start.
It's like a free bet. And it's every year it's plus 300, plus 400, plus 500 every year to score one touchdown. And every time he plays them, he scores.
Todd, your
My
Odell
guess is
pick.
that,
No, you go.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was talking your Odell pick. I was been kind of seeing all over the map. What are your kind of 11th round, right? It's not kind of not, I wouldn't say lottery ticket range, but you're not losing. He's not hurting you there. But what are your expectations for him? Because I've seen people be kind of all over the map on what they're expecting from Odell this year.
Well, as the wide receiver 5 on the team, I figured he was not going to hurt me. And according to what Jackson, Lamar's been posting, he's hoping to run a little bit less, and they want to step up the throwing game. So he's got to throw to somebody. Bateman is, I think I'm actually really high on Bateman still. But the way Lamar recruited Odell to come to the Ravens, I think he's probably going to be, I think he'll be the wide receiver 1 on that team. So whether they throw enough or not to justify it is, for Odell to have a good season is the question. But at my wide receiver 5, I'm all right with it.
The McCaffrey pick, me and Terp have talked a lot about. We worry, obviously, with his touches that he got when Mitchell was healthy, but he was elite, right, with the Niners, especially as a sole back. Eckler seemingly, obviously, passed him in this draft. Obviously, you took him at 6. How comfortable are you with Christian McCaffrey? And is he your RB1, or do you have guys ranked ahead of him? And mainly, I mean, relative to Eckler.
I fully expected him to be gone by the time he got for me, so I wasn't even thinking about him. And I share a lot of the same concerns. Like it was a little concerning when what's his name came back last year after the injury.
Elijah Mitchell.
I don't know why I'm having a break. Mitchell. How much work he got. But then again, McCaffrey falling all the way to 6. I felt like I couldn't pass it up. It was more of a, it was either him or Tyreek at that point, and I decided to go ahead and start with the running back. So, yeah, I share a lot of the same concerns, but I felt like that was one of those things. He doesn't usually fall that far. I had to kind of take the value and cross my fingers.
Yeah, he's a great value in some of these drafts. He's top 4 pretty much locked.
Yeah, we were saying that was maybe the one surprise.
In the top 3. I think his ADP is like 1.3. So he's in the first round. Obviously, somebody falls that far, it's a lot bigger percentage fall than normal, right? So it's not like you're ever going to see, Justin Jefferson at 4. It's just not going to happen. You know what I mean?
No shot.
Getting McCaffrey to fall to 6 was like
Jefferson, no shot.
Yeah, exactly. So I felt like I had to go ahead and take the shot since he doesn't normally fall that far. Although I had no intention of taking him at the beginning.
Sir, as we've been saying kind of these last guests, we were trying to get through everyone. Obviously, you're in the last round.
Yeah, absolutely.
Having a great draft. Thank you for just popping on. We wish you could have had you on longer, but again, excited for the draft. Thanks for giving us your analysis on some of those early round picks, and best of luck for the rest of the fantasy season.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you very much.
Good luck, brother.
Terp. Let's bring on another known Philly guy, right? Might as well. Let's do it. The Mojo himself, out of the 2 spot, right? If I'm reading my notes right. Yep, out of the 2 spot this draft.
Defending champ,
baby. Beating the best guys on earth.
Seriously, this draft is no joke.
I'm not just a data monkey. I'm out here winning leagues once in a while too.
What's your favorite cheesesteak? I don't know if you've been hearing us been talking about it because someone's in the chat talking about Ishkabibbles. Me and Turbo with Angelo's guys.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get down to the downtown Philly ones too often. I like Jim's. I think that's a good one.
Jim's is good. Quality steak.
Yeah. Otherwise, I'm out in Delco hitting the local joints. They're all pretty good.
Enough about cheesesteaks, though. You start off this draft with Kelsey and Mahomes. Got to be feeling good about that. hell of a start. Was Kelsey, when you saw you got the second pick, you're like, if Kelsey's there, he was always the pick, or how many guys did you kind of go through thinking about that?
Yeah, I tried to map out the whole draft, and I knew the only thing that I was going back and forth between Eckler, Chase, and Kelsey. But yeah, so I'll tell you a little nugget from last year. Let's draft my last kicker here. So Kelsey Mahomes stacks made it to the FFPC, the championship round with 65% of the time. So if you just had Kelsey and Mahomes, it didn't really matter what you did with the rest of your draft. Like the odds were in your favor to just.
It's a crazy number.
That's insane.
If you really think about it, like with all the guys who blew up last year, like that was 65%. It's nuts.
Yeah,
nuts.
Crazy.
So 2/3 of all the teams that had that stack. Man, now Kelsey's got to perform at that level again, and we're waiting for him to drop off. But even if there's some margin for error there. So, and I felt pretty good about the team. Like that was the plan. Only thing if Tupac would have did something crazy, and he's a wild card. So I was like, maybe he'll take Kelsey, and then I'll have to pivot. And then I took Mahomes right after because I didn't know what Tupac is going to do. He's
definitely a wild card. He had a wild card draft.
Yeah, he's always got something up his sleeve. But then after I hit that stack, then I was just going to pound receivers and running backs because you don't even need another tight end or quarterback once you have those guys. So
if Kelsey gets hurt, his team's in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I'm done anyway.
You know that drafting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing with Mahomes. I mean, you're in.
Yeah, and the Cousins pick was a tie. I was looking for John Mechie in the queue, and then the time expired, so I ended up with Cousins, which otherwise I probably wouldn't even drafted a second quarterback. But overall, I feel pretty good about the team. I didn't get as many running backs as I thought I would. These guys were sniping me. Hubbard's over there doing his usual, fill up the back half of the draft with running back. So didn't get as many as I hoped for. But
Kadarius Toney, are you buying in this year?
Are you worried about Hopkins possibly going to the Chiefs?
I mean, you got to draft with the information that you have at any given time. So it doesn't sound like they have the cap room for him. And I'm not a Toney guy, but based upon the team that I got, it's worth taking him. Like if Toney if he ends up being their number one receiver, then this team should really explode. I mean, to have the three key pieces. But otherwise, I'm not normally a Toney guy, but it made sense with this particular team.
You're getting some love in the comments section about your Derrick Henry in the 3rd round pick. You got to be loving that playoff schedule, right? The guests are blurring together, but people were talking. I think might have been Theo was talking about the playoff schedule, and you gotta love Derrick Henry there. It might have been Billy, I think actually.
Yeah.
So what was that your basis with that 3rd round?
Yeah, I knew. Just following the draft boards, I knew coming around that 3rd round, I was either going to get Ramondre, Derrick Henry, or Nick Chubb. So I would have been happy with any 3 of those guys. But yeah, Henry has the crazy. I think he gets Houston twice in the playoffs.
He does.
Yeah, so that's going to help. And then so I kind of had to defer the wide receivers, but I like those first 3 that I got, and we'll see. Now the thing is with these drafts, like if you go back and you look at the boards from last year, you can basically take all the players drafted after the 10th round and like throw them in the garbage because the players that determine your success or failure in this format are pretty much the ones you draft in the first 10 rounds. Everything else is just, it's not going to really be a determining factor.
You could get lucky with a Jerick McKinnon and guys like that, but most of the time you're drafting dead weight.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple guys, but last year was really like there weren't really any guys that kind of. I mean, there were a few.
Free agency was ugly last year too.
Not as much as in previous years, where like a handcuff rookie sort of came out of nowhere. There was less of that, so we'll see.
I'm going to scroll down here. We kind of didn't really focus on these last 3 rounds of this draft, but Hunter Renfrow, I noticed you snagged in the 18th round. There's a lot of rumors that he could get moved. So I kind of like that. I know there's not maybe you're a lottery ticket, right? There might not be much basis behind it, but is there any in the back of your mind with the Renfrow pick? Like he could get moved, and we saw Renfrow 2 years ago had a great year. So do you think there's great value there with Renfrow in these last 3 rounds as a lottery ticket?
Yeah, I mean that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to to pick guys that have, the potential to really contribute. So Renfrow, I mean, with you saw him do it, was it maybe a couple years ago? Like he went crazy. He was like a PPI. He was like Julian Edelman, like reincarnated.
Mm-hmm.
So that's within his range of outcomes. So, I mean, in 18th round, I just needed another receiver. He's the one that I thought about Peoples-Jones too, but I took Renfrow in that situation. And Knox, like I said, we'll see what happens with Dalton Kincaid. I mean, I'm not totally writing off Dawson Knox at this time. But again, 19th round pick on him, you can't really lose.
It's great value. I mean, the unknown with Kincaid right now is everybody's hyping him up, but rookie tight ends, I mean, he's not in the class of Kyle Pitts, what he was when he came out. So there's still a lot of unknown there. To get Knox where you got him, I think is a great pick.
Yeah, I mean, he ended up in a great spot.
He did.
And I keep calling him Golden Boy Kincaid. He's just getting steamed up so much. But like you said, rookie tight ends, that's the exception to the rule that they produce. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I was telling Type, if you look at first round, not just rookie tight ends, but just first round tight ends for the last decade, it's brutal. I mean, Pitts had one good year, but then we all know what happened last year. Your Antonio Gibson pick, just want to say, me and Terp, absolute love. I almost wish, obviously, the coaching staff
highest owned player so far.
Only the coaching staff hasn't been coming out and bumping him up because his value's been, I'm sure, is going to skyrocket the more and more you hear about the enemy talking about what a weapon he is. But also, your Cortland Sutton pick got some buzz. I believe Theo was live with us when you picked it. He was a bit surprised by that. You, again, another guy on the maybe trade block. You believer in Sean Payton after such a disappointment. You take him end of round 8. Are you post-type sleeper maybe?
I like taking guys that had a high draft capital the previous year and disappoint. In a lot of cases, they'll bounce back. So that's why I took him. And I think the Broncos are going to bounce back. I mean, they were so brutal.
So bad. It can't get any worse.
I mean, the bar is so low. To get him at the end of the 8th, that seemed like a fair pick at that point.
Any other picks that you were surprised that they fell to you, or did you feel as though this draft went largely kind of mostly in a range that you expected?
Nah, it kind of went like I suspected. I might have grabbed Tajay Spears a little earlier, but that's a little bit of Derrick Henry insurance. And I was going to take the defense, but those guys grabbed Philly and San Francisco. And the thing with the defense is you spend, in particular, this league is sort of like it's different than a lot of the other Fantasy Pros leagues. The guys in here, like I did an analysis last year. Because the waiver wire is like ridiculous with these guys.
Disaster.
So out of all the leagues, there was like 1,200 leagues. I think there was last year, or 1,100. This league had the third most transactions out of all of those leagues. So it's a constant mess. But what I'm getting at is the waiver bids on defenses, like it's not uncommon to see like $70 to like $90 on a defense. So I was hoping to if I get one of these premium defenses, that's going to save me some fab during the year. But I ended up with Baltimore, so I'll probably end up, doing a week-to-week thing at some point. Baltimore has a really good opening schedule, so that should be good for the first 4 weeks at least.
Couple weeks.
Yeah.
Sir, thank you for joining us. We got Todd. Todd is our last guest, so we're gonna hopefully interview him. Hopefully, he can pop in here. But Mojo, defending champion, fellow Eagles fan there for Terp. Thank you for joining us, and best of luck this season.
All right, guys.
Best of luck, brother.
Terp. While we wait for Todd, I don't know if Todd is popping in or not, but he is our scheduled last guest. I'm just gonna ask you.
Right on schedule with him. He should be popping on.
Look at our looking at the board, right? And I zoomed out so we can see. Hopefully, people can see how. What are you thinking? Right? You successfully predicted multiple Pros v Joes leagues, if I'm remembering. You predicted the overall Pros v Joes win.
I did.
Goat District, right?
The Goat District did win.
You said. If you're looking, I feel we were so focused on the guest. I'm gonna have to review it, or just even any picks that you really like that we maybe haven't talked about. I'm putting you on the spot right now. I'm gonna go do it.
I mean, I'm gonna go quick top 3 without looking like really, really crazy. Team 4, obviously Olave, Eckler, Watson, Akers, Marquise Brown, Chig, Jalen Warren has got to be up there. This isn't in no order. I really like what Team 12 did. I feel like the double tap of the quarterback with the tight ends, I feel like, with Freiermuth and then Kincaid, it gives this team, obviously with the top heavy receivers and then running backs who are in great spots. And, ETN, White, and Pacheco. Let's see who else.
Team 12,
I had
think.
to pick a third team.
Team 12 is they might be my favorite team as well.
I mean, if Richardson is what Richardson, a lot of people think he's going to be, I mean, this team, it could be the favorite.
I like Tua. I know he said it. I like Tua. I think
Tua
he put up massive
the thing
numbers.
about Tua is a wild card this year. Like I say it every show, but I'll say it again. Like he's probably right behind Herbert, right behind in that Trevor Lawrence. If there was no concussions, maybe higher. I mean, you saw what he did last year when he was healthy. He was a monster. But one hit and you could be having Mike White throw him the ball, which might not be the worst, but to take Tua, I mean, you gotta get a solid backup, which he did. Richardson with upside. I'm trying to think, who's a third team? Team 1, not crazy. Mojo,
This draft was as advertised. You hyped it up.
It's very, very difficult.
I knew absolutely that it would deliver, but I mean, you just hear everyone saying it's, and I'm sure as we kind of talked about, right? And I know you're looking for that third, is like when you factor in the wide receiver dead zone too, it's a tough room.
I'll go with Team 8. I mean, I like what they did at the receiver position. I'm not really crazy with Devontae Adams. This is more of a structure. I mean, P. Ryan, Connor, and Sanders are perfect for this format with Roshan Johnson, as a potential down the road. Ty Chandler, obviously, if Dalvin Cook gets moved, tight ends are a little questionable, but this year tight end is ugly. I mean, you saw what happened last year at tight end position. I mean, it wasn't great. If you had Travis Kelce, you pretty much won money.
Lightly. Yes. That
Andrews wasn't
Mojo
good. Goddard was okay.
Hawkinson turned on
good.
That's
Hawkinson.
Kittle had some big weeks, but they weren't full.
Kelce
was the only consistent.
Yeah. Kittle was the one that won people at the money at the end of the year, which, hey, that's all that matters. As long as you get there, if you have him, I mean, he's definitely a guy that was probably under-owned when it came down to it at the end. But with these drafts and these powerhouse drafters that are in this thing, you're not getting any value. There's no guys falling that should be, you look at it, like you said, after the 10th round, it's ugly. I mean, you're pretty much pushing guys up a couple rounds because you know that nobody's falling. Like Jerome Ford moved up. Jalen Warren, obviously, we talked about. I mean, all these guys are all upside plays, lottery tickets a little bit, backups, handcuffs, guys in uncertain situations. But, there's a lot of back to Team 12, a guy that I've been drafting a lot more, actually 2 of them, back-to-back after the double tap of quarterbacks, Keontae Ingram and Malik Davis. I mean, with the setup of this team, like I said with Tony Pollard, love him, my running back 2, but he's never shown he can take the full workload. So it's definitely a worry.
Final guest of the night here to discuss his draft. I had a good start, in my opinion. Really love those picks. Todd Burrows. Todd, thanks for joining the stream. I know it's late. Draft is over. Thank you for popping in.
Scheduled you last for a reason.
Yeah, you didn't want to hear from me.
Has your day got any better? You had a tough start to your day. Has it got any better? Has it improved a little bit?
I don't even want to talk about it.
That's a no.
Yes, it did. The old all's well that ends well. Can you hear me?
You had a good draft. You had a great start.
We can hear you loud and clear. Yeah, I'm loving the picks. Chase, Andrews. I mean, Bruce in the third. We've obviously seen him go as early as mid-second in some of these, so good value there. Is there any picks that you were either surprised that you got the value there, or that you were just like you just hammered? It was an instant click when they fell to you.
Well, I mean, Chase at 1-3. I never thought he was going to be there. I was planning on taking Cooper Kupp at 1-3, and I mean, Kelsey's 34 years old. You've got Hopkins possibly landing there. He was not going to be the pick at 3 for me. So started out real good. Second round pick, it was between Ramondre and Mark Andrews. I felt like, when you can get the tight end in this format and be, pretty much be done with it. Breece Hall was the last guy on a tier. I really like Jerry Jeudy. And I passed on Lamar in the 4th, thinking I could get him in the 5th. And I was going to take Godwin. It was going to be a toss-up.
It's hard to pass up Jackson with Andrews. I know this isn't best ball, so stacking isn't life, but I mean,
well, I was considering it because I thought there was an outside chance he could make it back. If not, all right. So here's the big thing with this draft. You're really playing to win this draft. It's part of the FPC, but the chance of coming out of here and taking everything down is really difficult, right? I mean, I don't think in the 4 or 5 years we've done this, anyone has had a run into the top 300-400 out of this draft. So my strategy was different here than obviously best ball, but even different than how I would play normal season long. I mean, things like taking Cook and Damian Harris together, backing up Likely with Andrews. The one thing I thought was kind of cool was, and it kind of, Andrews and Lamar, back to the thing about you want to win your money within the league because there's no guarantee. Having Andrews and Jackson at week 13, I wasn't even thinking about buys coming off all this best ball until someone mentioned it in the chat. Then I'm like, oh, crap, I got 2 guys week 13. So I thought Kyler, I took him a little early. I thought he was a really good pick to go with this team because, he has the ups, you're not really giving up much upside week 13 starting Kyler instead of Lamar, and that gives Kyler plenty of chance to be healthy. I liked how I was able to get 4 good wide receivers early and then get hit running back hard. I was surprised that LaPorta landed. He was not a guy I love, but again, he was another guy who, and he's the perfect antidote I felt for Andrews because I'm not counting on him through the year. And at the end, maybe he is ready to make a move. So I said I wasn't going to overtalk you guys, and I just went 4 minutes without you even answering your question.
Keep talking.
All good. You actually answered one of my questions. I was going to ask what the rationale was behind taking Kyler a little bit early and passing on guys like Kirk, Goff, and Smith, who I think are just in fantasy-friendly systems, and even Terp's saying that he likes Russell Wilson for maybe a bounce back. So I was wondering, you answered it about Kyler because I was wondering with the concerns with the knee, the lack of weapons. I thought that was a surprising pick by you, but seems to make sense.
Well, again, I don't think Kirk Cousins is going to, I think those guys are okay, but I don't know that they are guys that I want to keep on my roster all year. Anyway,
with Mike Williams.
What's that?
With Mike Williams with the Chargers, is he your Chargers target? Because everybody loves the Chargers this year.
I like the Chargers. I feel like that's 2 rounds later than Mike Williams goes in best ball.
It's a great value.
So I mean, I don't love the player, but if you look at what else was on the board, I did get sniped in the 7th. I like Dameon Pierce, but I also like Montgomery a lot. And that gets me into that Detroit offense. So, I got a lot of the guys I liked. I like Tajay Spears a lot. I think you guys all know that. That was real early for him to go. I think Mojo took him because he knew that I was going to take him, but I wasn't. I would have taken Harris anyway. I like that Cook. I like that Cook Harris combo. I've talked about stack cuffing. It's more of a best ball thing, but one of those 2 guys should have a really good year in that offense.
Yeah. Hopefully James Cook.
You're betting on the offense.
And then if one of them gets hurt, then you've got, Elijah Mitchell in between. I really like my, considering I didn't put a lot of capital into my running backs, I'm pretty happy with my running back room.
wanted to ask you about, are you a member of like the Michael Wilson hive that is forming on
No,
fantasy Twitter?
that was who got sniped ahead of me. I was going to take Isaiah Hodgins, who I think is a pretty good player. And then there wasn't much left. I don't like taking too many guys who are not upside in these kind of late parts of these drafts early. And I took Kyler, so it just made sense to stack, if I'm going to take a dart, it might as well be. I haven't even watched his tape, and I watched a lot of guys' tape this year.
Neither have I, but he is, like he said, that hive's forming because everybody's talking about Michael Wilson right now.
It's not. I will have zero shares.
It's all over Twitter.
I thought about Gesicki when I took LaPorta. So,
Really?
to get him as a fourth tight end in the 17th round, I wanted Thornton. I thought Thornton would have been a good pick. That was really the guy that I wanted in the 16th round. Maybe it was the 15th when he went, but yeah. But overall, look, this is, as everyone else has said, it's a very tough room. A lot of really good guys. I wanted P. Ryan. P. Ryan didn't make it back to me. But
you got one of your targets, though. I know you're like Elijah Mitchell. He's somebody I know you're high on.
Well, I like P. Ryan a lot more. I think Elijah Mitchell makes sense because, it was only a year ago that everyone was up in arms about McCaffrey's injuries, and again, the way that I've understand playing this kind of league and even best ball, you want that guy who's a backup in a really good offense, I think Mitchell's a guy you can start on a bye week and have a reasonable expectation that he will give you a 10-point week. And if McCaffrey goes down, he could be a league winner.
I think another guy who's just got to stay healthy, but I'm not trying to just like continually just hype up your draft, but the Raheem Mostert, I think, is a little undervalued because he showed really good flashes when healthy last with the Dolphins. I know all the love for A-Chain, his speed, but he is still a rookie. It wasn't a ton of draft capital invested in him. And there's a trust there, I think, between Mostert and Mike McDaniel. So I just wanted to just shout out. I wanted to hear if you were feeling the same way. Or if
he was a guy that wasn't on my radar, but, what ends up happening when everyone's so sharp and they're going up and getting their guys, Josh Downs was a guy I think I wanted there. Where did he go?
Josh Downs.
What round did he go? Oh, no, that was later. Who was it that I kind of wanted? No, I guess not. But I just was all of a sudden staring at him, thinking, he's a good pick here, Mostert. So I think what you have to do when you're in with really sharp people is you have to know when to reach and you have to know when to scoop value. You don't want your whole draft to be 2-3 rounds ahead of ADP in the name of being sharp. You
won't win like that, not in this league.
Well, in any league, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you really want to, if there's a guy that you think is worth reaching for, you reach for him. But if not, the next thing you want to look at is, okay, who's a good value here that fits my team? Like Donovan Peoples-Jones at the can you pull down so I can see the last couple rounds?
Sure. A quick second.
DPJ I was staring at him for 3 or 4 rounds, wondering why he wasn't going. I get why, but I have Elijah Mitchell. So there's another mini stack where, one of those two guys is going to be the number 2 wide receiver there. And basically the second part of it was free. So, those are the kind of things I like to do because I think you guys mentioned it at the end of with Mojo. Once you get past the first 10 rounds, there's a lot of guys who aren't going to fill spots on your team. So taking, guys who, match together, it's not a popular tactic. But again, I'm trying to win this league because the chances of making money, I'm more likely to do those kinds of correlations than I would in a main event where I'm trying to take down the main event.
Correct. You're betting on an offense.
I think it's a smart offense to bet on too, which is what you're saying. Obviously, there's a lot of buzz. You're hoping. I mean, we've seen Watson at his peak, right? Is a Pro Bowler, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Obviously fell off, but you're going to hope he can return to that. And by all accounts, Stefanski is going to try and throw more. And I completely agree with your rationale, although I am a Cedric Tillman guy. But more than likely, you're going to get, hopefully, one of those hits is Elijah Moore, DPJ is going to hit. And hopefully it's more because I think he's uber talented and hopefully has all the opportunity in the world. So I really did like that pick as well.
Yeah, I even like the Giant defense. You've got Thibodeau in his second year. I think he could be that guy who, turns from a guy who flashed to a guy who gets you 13 to 15 sacks. We know Wink Martindale is very aggressive. They added more pieces to that defense. Again, this is a tough league. And I think if you come out of this draft being super happy, you need to have your head examined. But I think that, I did as well as I could with what was presented with me. And I got lucky with Chase, and that could be the golden ticket.
Is Chase, you've been talking about him, is he your 101 or would you take Jefferson ahead of him?
Well, I think if you have a coin and you flip them, I think that is.
I don't think you can go wrong.
Yeah. But I take Jefferson at 1-1 because you don't get him at 1-2.
Correct.
And sometimes you get Chase at 1-3, and I've even gotten him at 1-5. It's kind of like McCaffrey last year, where you didn't take him over Jonathan Taylor because you wanted to have some Jonathan Taylor, and for most of the offseason you could get CMC, even down as low as 6, but. I mean, anybody who's got a confidence factor of who's going to outscore the other between those two guys, life hasn't humbled you enough with being wrong. I think because they're both, and the chance that one gets injured and the other one doesn't. Last year, Chase missed 4 or 5 games. It could be Jefferson this year. They're both great players. To me, they're the clear 1-1 and 1-2 this year.
100% agree.
And there's also, you obviously mentioned the CMC, how you could get him later in drafts, early, but drafts like these set the ADP, right? People look to this draft in particular, and they influences. Like, wouldn't shock me if the next couple of weeks that Eckler surpasses CMC, right? Because CMC dropped a bit further than expected. So we'll see. It's very interesting to see as the year goes on.
I love Dulcich, and he would have been my pick. He was almost my pick. It was between him and Elijah Moore in the 9th. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was just smarter to get that 4th wide receiver. I was hoping to sneak him through. I knew Dwayne liked him. I don't know if Dwayne was the one who got him. But getting LaPorta a couple rounds later than he normally goes kind of took the sting off of not getting Dulcich. And that's the point that I think you were making, Aidan, is, the ADP mistakes, they tend to go away within the next month or so. Mm-hmm. So, you load up as much as you can on the guys. Like, I think Tajay Spears is going to be a guy, that's really going to flash in camp. And, I take him in so many drafts. It's ridiculous right now.
I know he's one of your flag plants this year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you guys did this. You guys did a great job, and,
appreciate that.
I really appreciate you having me on.
Always a pleasure. We'll get you on here soon.
Well, and I'm going to let you go because I know for Terp and myself, the East Coast there, bedtime is calling.
I'm an hour. I'm in the Lehigh Valley.
You're right. You're close to us. Yeah. This is my bedtime now.
I mean, yeah. I love hearing you Philly morons arguing about who's the best cheesesteak. My answer is, if someone throws cheese whiz on it, it ain't the winner.
It ain't the winner.
That is a respectable take that a Philadelphia would be proud of. Yeah. Todd Burrows, thank you so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you, boys.
Terp, that's going to do it for us. Fantasy Pros Championship, $1 million grand prize, $6 million plus in a total prize pool. Drafts are happening daily. I believe there's going to be 6 starting over the weekend. I believe 4 maybe tomorrow. Multiple chances every day for you to get into this championship.
$1 million up top. Go get that
skyrocketing. Let me just tell you, last 2 weeks, multiple leagues every day filling up. So spots are going. Now's the time. Early bird promo is extended. If you have to register by June 15th, draft by June 30th, you get a free $35 FFPC credit. You can use on any of our $35 leagues. Max of 3 teams. So you can use up to 3 times. So I would recommend anyone trying to draft in the Fantasy Pros, get your registration in by June 15th for that. Terp, any final thoughts?
None at all. Great draft, real tough. Some of the best of the best. Expected fireworks, and we got it.
There we go. That's going to do it for myself and Terp. We'll see you guys hopefully soon. In the next couple of weeks, I'm sure Best Ball tournament draft will be popping off. Maybe another Fantasy Pros. Maybe Terp.
I'll be drafting some Fantasy Pros coming up here.
There we go.
Probably not in June, but July I'll be.
Okay.
We'll be on this channel and we'll get real weird.
I think we got to do one Superflex. Even bring someone in who's more knowledgeable at Superflex affairs.
Sign me up for that too.
There we go. That's going to do it for us. Thank you to all who tuned in. We had a lot of listeners. Thank you to all who was active in the chat. Again, Fantasy Pros Championship, myffpc.com or the FFPC app. $1 million grand prize, $6 million prize pool. Get in those drafts. We'll see you guys in the draft room.